Jazzcast Pros.
Welcome to Licensed to Love. I'm Lori McKnight, Executive Director of Families Thrive.
And I'm Veronica Black, Director of Program Services.
Together, our mission is to demystify the process of gaining your license to foster or adopt in New York State.
And to empower you with the tools, insight, and confidence to open your heart and home. Today, we are welcoming Michelle Hines back to the podcast. Yay!
Thank you so much for having me, Veronica.
Oh, no, thank you. And today, you're coming to share your story, more of the personal side, right? Not so much the professional side, because we all know, and our listeners may remember that you were the home finder for Families Thrive, and you've been in this field for a while and supporting families, and this is what you do. You eat and sleep this.
Yes, I would love to share our story, because our story is, I feel like it's very unique. And I feel like our story actually brought me to Families Thrive. So I feel like it's a full circle story for us.
So I do recall the last time you were here, you touched on your why, your reasons for fostering and then later adopting. Can you just give us a quick, a refresher, a little reminder of why you chose to do this?
So our why is really, I'm going to say our why because it's not only mine but my husband's, but we really have a heart for children, and we've both worked in education for many, many years, and we decided as a couple that we wanted to continue just reaching out to kids and in some way continuing to help kids when we left the field of education. We were a family. I had kids, so he had kind of become this, instant dad when we became a family. And we wanted to continue that journey in some way, shape, or form. And honestly, I wasn't getting any younger, so that we were looking at different ways that we could continue growing our family. And honestly, becoming a foster family really wasn't about growing our family. It was more about us continuing to help children. So really, our why is continuing to help. We absolutely did. Yeah. We felt we had a lot to continue to give. Mm-hmm.
And that's funny you say that. That was one of my reasons also. Being a single mom at the time, I wanted to do more, and felt like there was no greater gift or better way to give back than opening your heart and your home to someone who, who's less fortunate, or, a child who's in need, loving them unconditionally and all that good stuff. So I can definitely relate to that. Can you tell me, some of the challenges that you dealt with at placement when your child first, your foster children were placed with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We didn't really know what to expect going into foster care. We only knew that we were opening our home up to children in need. And we didn't know what that was going to look like, because, we had some guidelines that we wanted to stick by. And we were the family, we wanted little ones, because we had already had teenagers. So we were like, we wanted little ones. We specifically, really weren't preferring to have sibling groups. So we had the specifics that we wanted, and we thought that was just going to be easy. They were just going to, this is what we wanted, so this is what they would call us for, right? And of course, they called us for our first foster daughter, and she was a little one, so we're like, okay, this is it. This is what we're doing. We had her for 11 days, and when she came to us, we really didn't know what we were doing. We had the room prepped, we had all of the things ready, but we weren't really ready for what came with a child that was not our own child, that came in. It was like we had an idea of what it was going to be like, but until she was in our home and we were hands-on, we weren't really prepared. And the things that would come up, we could handle things in our home. She came to our home. She was the cutest little girl. We played, we did all the stuff, but a lot of the stuff that came with it, we weren't really prepared for. So the outside forces that we really didn't know what to expect with a child coming into our home. So we really didn't know what to expect with people coming into our home, appointments that we had to make. All of those things were completely new to us. And that, I think, with our first placement was the most difficult, just kind of understanding all of the things that went along with a placement.
So, I was the total opposite on that.
Yeah.
One. I didn't want littles.
Okay.
I didn't want any little ones. But I recall them calling me and saying, we have a 2-week-old baby girl at the hospital, coming straight from the hospital.
Right.
And, mom struggled with substance abuse, and they needed a placement for her. Mm-hmm. And here I am, my heart is beating, and I'm like, 2-week-old baby girl. I was like, oh my goodness, there's no way I can do that. I'm like, my son is active, I work full time. So I'm like panicking and going crazy inside. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Then I'm thinking all the equipment, I got to find a daycare. Oh, this is just not going to work. Yeah. And I said, I asked her, I said, well, why did you call me? And she said, well, you said you wanted, younger kids. I said, no, not that young.
That's really young.
Yes. I was thinking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11, 12, not 2 weeks old.
Not fresh out of hospital.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, and the baby had some challenges, and she called me back and she said, I just want to let you know we found someone. You don't have to worry and everything. Because I said, yes, I would take her. But I was sweating, boy. I'm telling you, I was like, baby days. I was just thinking, I haven't had a baby in years. Oh, my goodness. So she called me back and said she found someone. And then I ended up finding my son on my own. And I reached out to one of the surrounding counties, and I shared with them, that I was approved. I wanted to adopt. Of course, I'm willing to foster, but I wanted to adopt for my first one. And so the caseworker shared all the information that he had on the kids on his caseload. And it was interesting because I had no picture, no nothing. Mm-hmm. And he just shared all this information and with maybe like 5 or 6 kids. And I just said, you know what? That's the one that I want. That's him, that's him. That's my baby. And he was placed with me. And as you said, like you said, you just don't know what to expect, It's the unknown. That piece is like, but it makes me wonder, even when you work in the field, do you really know what you're going to get? What to expect? Because each kid, each family, everything is different, each situation. So you really can't say, right? You can't say that, it's going to be like this. You can't. Right. So when my son, right. So when my son came, he was, he had already lived in like 7 different placements. He was 6 years old and struggling with the idea of being told that he had to leave his mom and his dad because his former foster parents told him he could stay there as long as he wanted. So that's what he believed. So here it is. It's like, who is this lady? She's now coming in. But, it's sad because you really don't have that opportunity to get to know the kids.
Right. I think you're right in terms of like opposite of us, because when they told us, I didn't even ask questions. They just said it was a little girl. She was, I think she was about 16 months old. And I was like, yes. They're like, yes, just drop her off. I'm home. I'm on my way. I'm getting in the car and I'm going home. And so, that was kind of that exciting part where I really didn't ask questions about her needs and things like that. And I had her for 11 days and it was a beautiful 11 days. And I didn't understand why after 11 days when she left, I was a mess.
Oh, yes.
I was after 11 days.
That's something that we need to talk about. People don't talk about the families and what the families feel and what they go through, once a kid is moved.
I knew reunification was the goal, right? That wasn't even a question for me. It was just how fast we all connected to her.
Michelle, let's talk a little bit about that, what that looks like, because, you hear about the trauma that the kids feel, being bounced around and everything, and that feeling of loss. And you rarely hear people talk about the loss that the family feels and what they're going through. So you hit it. You said it. Tell us how you were feeling when you suffered that loss, when she had to move.
I think for us, and I think I could speak for my husband also, it was a surprise because it was one of those where they said, I need you to pack her things because tomorrow morning you're going to take her to daycare. And then the caseworker is going to pick her up at daycare and take her where she's going to go. So I think that was kind of the shock for us. We're like, hold on a second. We've had 11 days. We got her into a routine. She's learning how to go down a slide. She's doing all these fun things. And now it's done. And it was heartbreaking for us. And I know that we both had tears. I know that we both kind of were like, I'm not sure if we could do this again. And it sounds weird because it was 11 days, but it was 11 days of intense time with a little girl who was struggling. You know what I mean? So the day that I took her and dropped her off and knew I wasn't going to be able to come pick her up, I literally cried in the daycare. I'm dropping her off. She said bye-bye. I gave the daycare her bags, and that was going to be it. And so I wasn't prepared for it. My husband wasn't prepared for it. And I know that we had tears after that because we didn't know where she was going. We only knew that the caseworker was picking her up. So it was at that point that we decided, we need a little bit of time before we take another child because we have to figure out how we do this again. And I think we always talk about, foster kids and how are they going to handle this? How are they going to handle being moved from house to house? And we're going to help them do that, right? But for us as the adults, who's going to help us figure it out, right? And so my husband and I took 2 weeks and we just said, we're going to take 2 weeks and we're going to figure this out. And then we're going to open our home again. But it was devastating. Even though we knew it was for the best, we knew that was the goal. We knew all of the things. It was still hard. There's times we laugh now, and this was 10 years ago when something comes on the TV that we remember that she loved to watch. Daniel Tiger, actually it was Daniel Tiger. And so anytime we see something with Daniel Tiger, we smile at each other because we think of her, right? And that was almost 10 years ago. So we have come to where we know when a child leaves their home, it's going to take us 2 weeks to recover mentally, emotionally, our home, our kids, because I still had one child at home at that time. Right. And so to help everybody kind of recover, it takes us a good 2 weeks before we are ready to have another kiddo come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is hard. It is really hard. And unfortunately, it's unfortunately, we don't focus on the loss of, that the parents feel. And it should go both ways because in order for you to, successfully care for a child, we need to make sure that you're able to heal. You have that proper time. And I know I've come across a lot of families who suffer that loss. They bonded and they attached to the child and the child leaves. And many families talk about how that's so devastating that they can't do foster care, So, and then I have to try and flip it and let them know that, there's a bigger picture. It's not about you.
Right. And us being adults, we can figure it out.
Yes.
Right. Yes. We can figure out how do we recover so that we can be at our best to have another child come in our home. We can figure it out as adults. So it's worth that little bit of heartbreak that we can figure out to help a child in need. It's worth it. It's worth it. It really is.
Yeah, it is. So, one of my biggest challenges when I had my son, my first placement. Now, I've had several foster care placements, but well, I had a few foster care placements, but I had several respite placements, outside of my boys that I ended up, eventually adopting. Right. But one of the biggest challenges was the file, reviewing that file and getting that kid in my, bringing him into my home and basically comparing, what I just read about this kid, So it's like, but they said, but I don't see that. And this is what I see. But, it's like, do you really judge the book by its cover, or do you... It's unfortunate. Yeah. And many children, especially teens, always say, don't judge me based on my file, get to know me first. But as a new foster parent, you read that file, or pre-adoptive, or whatever the case may be, you review that child's file and you're thinking, oh my God, and then you get the kid and it's a totally different story.
Yeah. Well, I think as foster parents, we have to be prepared as we can get. We have to hear the information and make that judgment for ourselves, whether it's something that we can handle or not. We were not going to take sibling groups. One of the things we weren't going to do is sibling groups. And we got a call for a sibling group, and
how funny.
And we said yes. And it was a group of 3 boys. And that really should have scared us a little bit, but it didn't. We're like, all right, challenge accepted. And we brought these 3 boys into our home, and it was very short. But if we would have thought about it, if we would have overthought it, we would have said no, right? We knew we had each other. We knew that we had raised a boy before. We knew we were trained well. We knew we had the information we needed. And it wasn't our second placement. We had a couple in between, but this was our first big sibling placement. And I'm so glad we took them. We had, and it was a lot to juggle. There was school, there was daycare, there was all these things, but we really bonded with them, and we understood that taking sibling groups in wasn't as scary as we thought it was going to be, because we were afraid of the dynamic of the siblings and things like that, but brought them into our home. The bedroom looked like it was the 3 bears, like big, little, or small, or large, medium, and small beds in the room. But we took them in, and we gave them a chance, but we also gave ourselves a chance to really step up and be there for them. And I don't remember how long they were with us. They weren't with us more than a month. And it was one of the best decisions we made in our foster care journey, was opening our homes to these siblings. Right. And we learned a lot about ourselves. And again, when they left, we were sad, but we knew it was for the best. And we took our 2 weeks, because we kept that. That was in between placements. We took our 2 weeks. We regrouped, we recovered, and then we opened our home again. So some of the things that we were not going to do, we ended up doing. And it was like the best decisions we made.
We talk about taking in siblings. My 2 siblings that I took in, I remember being, matched with my youngest, and the caseworker called me back and said, he had a brother whose placement fell through. He had a younger brother, and she said her supervisor wanted to know if I would take both of them. And I'm thinking, wait, okay, you guys know I'm a single mom and I already have 2 at the house, so what are you serious? Are you sure? Mm-hmm. So she's like, yeah, you don't have to answer right now, think about it. And I talked to my other 2 boys about it, and they're like, yeah, Mom, what's one more? We're already doing it. What's one more? So I'm like, okay, it will be 4 of you guys then. And that's a lot for one person.
And you were outnumbered.
Oh, was I? But like you said, challenge accepted. I committed, and knowing that they're brothers, I didn't want to split them up, and that's a common thing today is, splitting up siblings. And who wants to do that? No one wants to split up a sibling group. And so, and I didn't think I would be able to live with myself knowing that he had a sibling somewhere else, and I had the opportunity to take them. So I said yes. And boy, did I have my hands full. Okay. And I, I believe and I trusted that God wouldn't give me anything that I couldn't handle, So I put together a plan. I had a support network. And people I can call on if I needed help, and amazing friends, family. So, it wasn't all easy though.
No, it's not. It's definitely not easy.
It wasn't all easy, but it's fulfilling, especially now, looking at them today and how they've grown.
Right.
Now, I mean, in college and, just one has graduated from college and, you have one who's going to school for biology and his focus is to be a doctor one day.
Hello.
Yes, that's what I said. So it's like how, these are former foster kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And
then look at your kids. Look at your daughter.
Yeah. Let's fast forward then, right?
Let's talk about it. Tell people there's some good in this. It's not always the negative. People only hear about the negative stuff, and we need to get it out there that our kids are resilient. Not just ours, but foster children. Period. They are so strong. They've experienced so much adversity that look at them now. With the right support, they can flourish.
They absolutely can. And so we'll fast forward to the children that my husband and I adopted in 2019. And this goes back to being open to sibling groups. Because if I hadn't, because once I said yes to a sibling group, that's all I got calls for. And that was, so we had sibling group after sibling group after sibling group. And it was like, that's it. And so it got to a point where, the last sibling group we had was gone and we're like, holy cow, we're tired. Like it's tiring. It's exhausting. It's fulfilling. It's worth it. It's all of the things. But we got a call for 2 siblings and, I got a little bit of a spiel about them. And I said, you know what? I have to call my husband. And I called my husband and I said, Tag, you're it. Because typically I would hear from a caseworker, I would kind of make a decision. I'd call him and be like, I think we can do this. And this one, I had to tag him in. I go, I need you to call the caseworker because I don't know if we can do this one. This is a little bit much. There were some diagnoses that came with my daughter. There were some accusations about my son. There were all of these things that had come to the forefront where I was like, I don't really know. And so he called and talked to the caseworker and basically said, challenge accepted. He's like, hon, I think we could do this. And I said, if you think we can do this, then I know we can, but I needed you to make that decision because there's a lot that's coming with them. Yes. And so they weren't coming from their biological home. They had been bounced around and they were actually coming from an unsafe place to our home. And so when they came to us, I was terrified because of the things that were told to me about my children. I say my children now, but about these 2 kids. And it was return to parent. That was the goal. They weren't coming to my house to be adopted. Their mom was doing the things that she had to do. So it was like, okay, this is temporary. This is completely temporary. We can do this temporarily. We can set up, we can have a safety plan. We can talk about what we need to do to keep everybody in the house safe from all of these things that were told to us. They come to our house. They're amazing. We didn't see anything that was told to us where we had to keep people safe. Right. My daughter had challenges. They were definitely things that we had never experienced before, but we worked with her. We worked with her teachers, her counselors. We did all of the things. And they progressed, and it was amazing to watch. But if we had said no to siblings way back, and we didn't say challenge accepted to these kids, I don't know where they would be. Because unfortunately, they were in an unsafe place. And it was a place that they were told that they were going to keep them safe, and they didn't. And so when they came to us, they hadn't been able to process being taken from their mother's home. Because they had to keep themselves safe in the next place. So when they came to us, it was kind of like all hell broke loose, because they literally were like, okay, I think we're safe now. And all of the feelings can come out and all of the stuff. And it did. It came out hard. And my husband and I worked really hard with our kids to get them to a place where they felt completely safe and loved and cared for. And it took a long time. It took a very long time for them to get to where they knew that this was their safe place until they could go with their mom, because we were still thinking they were going to go with their mom.
Right.
They were going to be reunited with their mom. They were going to go home. And when we found out that wasn't going to happen, we were shocked, because I don't know that we ever really put ourselves in a place where we were going to adopt children. It was really, we were just doing foster care because these kids were all going to go home. And all the kids that we had were going home. Excuse me. And so when they said that we were going to be able to adopt them, I think it was another sort of panic for us. Like, hold on. That was not the plan. That wasn't, we were preparing them so they could go home and be in a safe home with their mom. And so, when you're told that you can adopt, that's a whole nother story. That's a lot of inner work for a family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of work for the children coming into the home, understanding that this now will be their forever home when they always anticipated leaving.
Right.
So that was a lot of work in itself there too. Yeah. But we adopted them. They came to us in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
We adopted them in 2019. And now they're 16 and almost 18 years old and amazing humans.
Yes.
Amazing humans.
Yes.
Because they were given a chance, right? They were given a chance, and they have beat every stereotype that has been put out there about children in foster care. They really have. They have come so far. Do we have bumps in the road? We absolutely do. And I say that's their trauma, but I also say that that's them being teenagers, right? Because they're still teenagers. And that's one of the things we joke about. One of the things when we became foster parents, we said little kids and no teenagers. And we did not understand the fact that they were all going to become teenagers eventually. So we did end up with teenagers at the end. But, I think they have really come around to understand their strength as young adults and kids in foster care that are not a statistic. These kids don't have to be statistics at all. They all have the opportunity to be something more.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is so true. My younger two were adopted in 2013. I adopted them. And like you said, there's tons of challenges. So not only do we not really talk much about the loss of the losses that the families may feel, but we also do not talk about the adult years.
Yeah.
So like you said, you wanted an infant, you wanted littles, but you didn't want any teenagers. Not realizing
but I got them.
They're going to be teenagers, right?
I got them.
Right. So here we are. We focus on the now.
Right.
But we don't really prepare families for the adult years. We don't talk about the adult years. And what about those kids who are not as successful as ours, who don't have that support, that our children have, and the challenges that the families that have them or may not have them face, So I recall speaking with a family not too long ago, and she shared some of the things that she was going through, and I felt so bad because this kid is an adult now who can't live on his own, and no one prepared her for the adult years. And I think that's something that we need to start focusing on. So, yes, we're looking for families today, for children today, but the kid has these needs today. But what can that family look forward to in the future? You know, is there something there or some kind of resources or whatever when this kid becomes an adult? I felt so bad. My heart was just, going out to her, and just, she's struggling. And we don't talk about the adult years. And why do you think that is, Michelle?
I think because I think it's scary. I think, we have this idea of when we adopt our kids, they're going to be okay. Things are going to be better because we're going to adopt them. And so love cures all. They're going to be all of a sudden, because now they have, our last name, and we're a family, that all of the trauma and all of the things that they've endured are all of a sudden going to go away. And I say that, the things that my children came with, I didn't see, but they still have the trauma. They still have a diagnosis. They still have all of these things that affect them not only right now, but are going to affect them as adults, right? And sometimes I think we have to have that reality check of adoption does not take away the trauma that these kids have endured. And it's important to continue to get these children and these young adults supports as they move through their young adult years, and preparing them and understanding that, yes, our children, your children are in college, my children are preparing to go to college, but there are some children who that's not the course that is right for them. And it doesn't make them any less than the children who are going to go to college, right? And it's important for the foster parents to continue supporting them in whatever path that they're going to go on. And sometimes that path takes a little bit longer for children who have experienced trauma, loss, and grief, right? The path is different, but it's not a less important path, right? And I just don't think there's enough, like you said, spoken about the adult years. And I think that's something that needs to be a focus, so that all of the kids that come through foster care, no matter what their traumas are, there's space for them as they become adults.
Right. It is unfortunate. I continue to say that it's unfortunate, because a lot of parents are not prepared. No. They're not prepared. And not saying that I was prepared, because I wasn't. I faced a lot of challenges with my oldest son, and like you said, each child's path is different, especially based on, their needs and everything. I have 4 kids, and they're all going in different directions, doing different things. And, everyone's level of success is different, right? You gauge it differently. So,
but one is no less than the other, right?
Exactly.
As they move through foster care and as they move into adulthood, their needs change, right? And it's our job as foster parents to be able to support them, because we always talk about when we have youth in our home, their needs are different and approaches have to be different for every child in the home, even if they're siblings, right? Their needs are different. So the approach to get them to where they need to be is going to be different. And it doesn't change as they grow, right? The needs are different.
Yeah, and you can't parent them the same.
Right.
You can't. So I had 4 different kids in my home at one time. I had my birth son. I had my first foster child who I adopted. And then I had the sibling group. And each and every last one of them were different. No one would say the sky is blue, and the other one would see rainbows, and it's like, wait, what are you looking at? But they're different. Their story is different. Their history, everything, their experiences in life is different. Their trauma is different. So I had to be creative. And being that I was one person, I had to be creative to make sure that I met everyone's needs, and ensuring that everyone felt safe and loved unconditionally. And, I throw that in all the time. It's all about that unconditional love. Yeah. Because they're used to people quitting on them, right?
Yep. I know that I've spoken to a foster mom who had a young girl come into her home, and she said to me, Michelle, everyone has quit on this young girl in her short life of 4 years. Everyone has quit on her. And she says, you know what? I'm not giving up on her. I'm not quitting on her because I'm not going to be that person that's going to quit on these kids. Oh, yeah.
Just because, we call it the honeymoon period, right? So they're basically testing to see how committed you really are. Is this really unconditional love?
Exactly.
Right. So if I do this,
you say it's unconditional.
Right. You say it, but if I do this, are you going to put me out? Right. So I recall plenty of times I remember telling my son, like, nope, you're not going. I'm not calling a caseworker. Nope, you're not going anywhere. We're going to deal with it. You're going to deal with the consequences of your actions, and we're going to live happily ever after.
Yeah, because I love you, and it's unconditional.
And he was used to his former and previous foster parents calling the caseworker and saying, hey, he has yes, exactly. So that's not an option. We are a family. We're here. I committed to you, and this is how it's going to be.
And it doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter if you're, a teenager or a young adult. Exactly. It doesn't matter. We've committed, and this is what it is. And, I think our kids and foster kids in general need that to understand that level of commitment because they hear it so much. This is your forever home. This is your forever home. And it ends up not being their forever home. Right. And so sometimes they hear that and they're like, yeah, right. I've heard that before. But they have to see the action that's behind those statements.
Right. So, having a girl and boy, I don't have a girl. I would love to, I've always wanted a little girl, but you have a little girl and who's precious and beautiful. What was that like, knowing that she knows who her bio mom is, right? She's old enough to remember and all that stuff. Was that challenging for you, being a woman and looking to bond and be that person for her? Right. Was that difficult?
Her and I, because I have an older daughter also, as a foster parent, you have to kind of, if you have biological children, you have to kind of put the way they are to the side and what your expectation is for a daughter to the side. Because my youngest daughter is the polar opposite of my oldest daughter. And our approach to her has always had to be different from the beginning. We learned a lot about her behaviors and we knew where they came from. We also knew that her way of connecting was not your typical way of connecting. She's not a huggy girl. She's not affectionate. She doesn't like hugs. She doesn't come up and give hugs. And so I had to look at that and go, this isn't about me. Because I would get upset, like, well, how come she doesn't want to hug me? Or she doesn't, she doesn't like when I put my arm around her. She'll kind of wiggle away or whatever. And we had to realize it wasn't about us. And how could we as adults connect with her as a young girl who has gone through a lot of trauma in her life, and as at an age now where she does remember it. And I had to look at her as her own person. I had to look at her as she was my daughter. From the moment she moved into my home, she was my daughter, no matter how long it was going to be. And I had to get to know her outside of her diagnoses, outside of the file, right? I had to get to know her and how she was going to show affection, what was comfortable for her. How is she going to be and accepting me as a mom figure? And because of her history, she actually took to me as a mom figure pretty quickly. But yet it's still very different from how my oldest daughter looks at me as a mom, right? My daughter looked at me like, okay, this person is not going to hurt me. This is a person who's going to keep me safe. This is a person who, I can talk to, I can be myself with. And she definitely, it's taken her a long time to kind of come into her own as my daughter. And she more or less didn't talk about her biological mom for a very, very long time. And just recently has come to where she's comfortable enough with me to share some things. But it's taken how many years? It's taken many, many years for this to come to pass, for her to be able to say, I know what happened to me as a young girl, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be like my biological mom. I don't want to do the things that she did. And as a mom, it's taken me a while to understand her way of showing me that she loves me. And I share some of her quirky things that she does to show me that she loves me. And it's things that you wouldn't even think about. She, I always would say to her, good morning, when she'd come down the stairs, and she'd kind of walk past me. Or she'd grunt. She was a grunter, and she'd just walk right past me. And I'd be like, wow, I think she needs some coffee or something. I don't know what's happening with her. But she would always just kind of make noise. And it hurt my heart because I'm like, why doesn't she feel the same way I feel when I see her walk into a room? Like I see her walk into a room and like my heart would burst. And so her way of saying good morning to me became this little head nod, right? And she'd walk by me and she does this little head nod. And to this day, that is her way of saying good morning and hi, mom, and acknowledging. And some people don't see it the same way we see it, but that's her way of communicating. Do you know what I mean? And
it's not going to be the same.
It's not the same. It's not the same as my other children. It's not. It really isn't. I've had only maybe once or twice where she has come up to me and just given me a hug. And so because she doesn't hug me as much as your typical daughter doesn't mean she doesn't love me any less. Doesn't mean I don't love her any less. It's just different. Our kids' way of showing things is different. And we have to be open to that. As a mom, I have to be open to the fact that she has never been treated the way she should be treated as a girl, as a female, by a mom figure. And it's going to take her a while to understand that it's okay. The way that our relationship is okay. And it's caring and it's loving. It's just different.
Yeah. Oh, I think about the first time my son called me mom.
Yeah, right.
Can you remember that? I think about that all the time. And I recall us driving. We were driving and my birth son, he calls me mom. That's natural, right? That's to be expected.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we're driving. I'm driving and I'm talking to them and my son goes, Mom, whatever, asking me a question. And then my other son, he's like, well, what am I going to do, Mom? And I looked at him and
it like catches your breath, right?
Yeah. So I'm trying to stay calm and everything. And I looked at him and my other son, he looks at him and he's like, I can call you Mom, right? And I said, you can call me whatever you want to call me, because again, it should be on their own time, right? It's not you come into my home and I'm going to tell you, you need to call me Mom today, tomorrow, or whatever.
No, this is who I.
Right. So I explained. I said, you can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me Hey Lady.
There you go. Right.
But,
right.
You can call me whatever you want. So he said he wanted to call me Mom. And
that's a big step
right there. Oh my goodness. When he called me Mom, I remember my heart was just like, I wanted to pick up the phone and call the world to let everyone know, hey, you just called me Mom, whatever. I was so happy and it just felt so good and so natural. But one of the things I recall is he would always tell me that he loved me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he doesn't know me. He just got here. But he constantly would tell me that he loved me. And I realized where that was coming from. You know, he's a people pleaser for one. You know, he doesn't want to move again. He's trying to, you know, win me over and all that. And so I recall feeling like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What if he wasn't loved? You know, what if, you know, he didn't feel loved, and now he's just saying it every 2 seconds. He's like, I love you, Mom. I love you, Mom. So now I'm thinking, okay, I have to make sure he knows that I love him. So I'm like drowning him in I love yous, right? You know, drowning him in I love yous, hugging him regularly. And before he could say it, I try to beat him to it. He'd be doing whatever. And I'm like, hey, buddy, guess what? And he'd say, what? And I say, I love you. And he would just smile so hard. I mean, a big smile. And it just stuff like that, you know, when you talk about love, just seeing his reaction. And, you know, I know in the beginning it can be challenging because you're trying to get to know each other and all that, and learning each other's behavior. Well, not each other, but learning that child's behaviors, and that child is trying to adjust to this new environment. It can be challenging because you don't know for sure if you can trust these people, right? The kids don't know if they could trust us. They don't know if we're going to feed them, beat them, lock them in the basement. They don't know anything. All they know is that they've been bounced around and they've been traumatized. They've been hurt and all that stuff. So coming in to this new placement, it's like, where am I? And who are they? And it's like, you know, I recall feeling like, oh my goodness, I have to make sure he feels loved. I have to make sure he has everything, you know? So I was like overdoing it to the point where, you know, he was my first one. So, you know, you don't know, right? So I'm overdoing it. I'm showering him with nothing but love in every way possible. You know, I made sure he had every material item, like toy and everything that my birth son had, he had. You know, I made sure he had every experience. I'm trying to just drown him in love, you know? But then I had to step back and realize that's not what it was about. And I see foster parents today making that same mistake. You know, you have to you have to have the structure, you know, you have to be consistent, you know, you have to show them that you're there, meaning you have to show up for them. You have to be present. So once I realized, I started to talk to him more and letting him know that basically it's me and you against the world. So you have to be honest. You have to talk to me. You have to tell me what's going on, because I can't protect you and keep you safe if you don't talk to me. We are a team. And it got to the point where he understood that. And I remember the school calling and saying, hey, you know, he wrote an essay and I just want you to read it. It was very interesting. And I was like, really? And, you know, she's like, yeah, I'm going to send you a copy of it. She sent it and I read it and I was in tears. And he talked about how his mom loves him unconditionally. And she comes to school and she fights for him every day. Mm-hmm. And he said, and his mom teaches him that, you know, there's always going to be consequences for your actions. And I mean, and I was like, oh my goodness. So that means he heard me. Right. And this, yes. So I'm like, oh my goodness, he was listening. He heard, he can hear. And this was in elementary school. So not middle school, not high school, you know, he was young. And that right there touched me to see that he heard and he you know, he's getting it. Yeah. But that didn't change, you know, our challenges that we had.
Absolutely. I think for our kids, you know, they've heard the word love probably a lot in their lives, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And many times that they hear the word love, sometimes it's connected to trauma.
Yes.
And so as parents, as adoptive parents or foster parents, it's our job to show them what love, a healthy love is, right? And the healthy love with the boundaries, healthy love with expectations, healthy love with I'm there for you, the structure, all of the things, because when we blindly tell our kids we love them, their reactions could be not what we would expect them to be because they've heard that so many times before.
Well, you know, we have to think about those who don't hear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't hear it, but they think, you know, you're my mom, you're my dad, you're supposed to love me.
Yeah.
but your actions said something, show differently, So yeah, it's unfortunate. It really, really is. Michelle, I want to thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
I want to end with a message to those who are listening and, they're on the fence, not sure whether or not they should move forward and be that champion for one of our youth, be a foster parent or even an adoptive parent. You never know. A lot of people start off and say, hey, I just want to foster, and what end up happening? They end up adopting.
That was us.
Exactly. And just to add to this, those who are not familiar with the process, if a kid is in care for a certain amount of months, 12 to 15 months, the TPR must be started, and TPR is termination of parental rights. And if that kid is placed in your home at that time that their parents' parental rights have been terminated, the foster parent has first choice at adopting. And many of our families do that. I know you did it that way. Now, with my first child, he was already free. Parental rights were already terminated. So he was just in foster care, and they were looking, for a adoptive family, a permanent family for him. So my situation was just a tad bit different. But just, to let families know, they hear adoption and they think, oh, wow, that's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars. That is not the case if you take this route. It costs nothing at all to adopt through the foster care system as a foster parent, right? Yeah, so just wanted to throw that out there. If there's anyone listening who may want to adopt but are afraid that it may cost, thousands of dollars, which it doesn't if you're going to take the foster care route. Mm-hmm.
Right. I think we have to encourage people to take a chance on our kids because people haven't taken a chance on them. And so be brave. Just do it. Yes. Just take a chance on a child, take them into your home. Love them while you can. Love them while they're there. Teach them what unconditional love is. Teach them boundaries. Teach them healthy love. Teach them what it's like to be in a family, and until they're ready to go back, until that reunification can happen. And if it doesn't, then take a chance on them being in your home permanently. I think that it's a big step for families, but I think also just taking that step and having the support behind you, as our agency does, supporting our families through the adoption process, no matter what it looks like, whether it's through foster care or straight adoption. But just take a chance on these kids.
Right. That's all we ask, is that they take a chance, right? Open your heart, open your home, and love one of our children unconditionally. It is rewarding. It really is. And one thing we did not add, and maybe we should say this, is that you're not going to get a kid into your home and they're not going to scream, oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for saving my life. You saved my life. And, oh, I love you so much. And no, that's not going to happen. To be realistic, kids, they have to learn to trust you. You have to prove yourself to them, one. And two, you may not get that until they're older. You know what I mean? They're adults and they actually understand the process. Now, are they grateful? Yes. Are they going to say that to you? Maybe not. So
they actually could say the opposite sometimes.
Right. So don't go in expecting this attitude of, gratitude and, oh, you saved me. Don't do it for that. You will be disappointed, and don't go in thinking, oh, well, as a foster parent, there's plenty of foster parents who have heard, you're not my mom, right? You're not my mom. You're not my dad. I don't want to be here. Yeah. And for those families who are hearing that can be a test. And one thing you must remember is that no kid wants to be in foster care. Who? So yes, they don't want to be with you. They want to be somewhere that's forever. They want to be with the one that's going to love them unconditionally.
Yeah.
That's it. So yes, I'm not your birth mom, but I'm here. Right? I'm here and I'm going to be here. I'm not going anywhere.
That's that first test of commitment, right? Is when they tell you that first time they say, I don't want to be here. That's your first step. That's your first challenge, is to get over that challenge and understand that, they don't want to. They want to be home. They want to be with people they know. And it's gonna take a while, but they get to where, when they start feeling safe in your home.
Right. So it's okay to not want to be here. It really is. And they need to share that with the kids. It's okay. I understand you don't want to be here, but you are, and we're going to make the best of it. We're going to work together. We're going to make this work. But families just need to understand, because I did have a family call me one time and say, oh, well, well, he said he doesn't want to be here. Okay, right. And what, is that surprising?
Because he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. He was removed from his family. What do you mean he doesn't want to be? No, he doesn't. You should understand that. So don't be disappointed. That may happen, and just accept it for what it is and continue to love him or her unconditionally. And time, it takes time, but things will change. They do get better. They do get better. So
there are happy endings.
Yes. Someone had told me one time that it's going to take as many years as that child had been in care to undo all that they have experienced, to help them to heal, And I don't know how true it is, because you really can't put a time frame on it. You know what I mean? It definitely takes time, and especially depending on the type of person or parent and support that child has, you can't put a time frame on it. So I don't know how true it is, but
it puts it into perspective a little bit.
Yes, it does. It does. So thank you so much again for joining me. Okay. And let's connect again.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to License to Love.
If you're curious, cautious, or already in the process, License to Love is your roadmap on this journey.
Every child deserves a safe, loving home, and we're here to help you gain your license to foster and adopt. Follow License to Love on the Jazzcast Pros Network, available wherever you get your podcasts.